Hey, what's up, everybody? BDO44 coming at you with another video. All right, so I want to talk a little more about the NBA, what I saw tonight. An all-star game, just kind of zooming out, not necessarily talking about the game itself, but just the overall sentiment of the game and just the fact that I didn't enjoy it at all. Like, at all. I only remember one all-star game where I absolutely did not enjoy it. It was only one, and it had to be a random one like 15 years ago. It hasn't been recent. Most of the games are really fun, or at least kind of competitive. If they're competitive, if they if they're lacking in competitiveness, you at least have some stuff to look at in regards to the atmosphere there or something. There's something to it. Tonight, it just drug out. It just drug on and on and on and on. In the halftime performance lasts too long. The breaks between periods last too long. Too many, 3-point shots launched. Wide open lanes. No defense played. Terrible basketball. Mike Malone said it was the worst game ever played. you know, um, Kareem Report mentioned that he thought it was awful. He couldn't stand it. I'm pretty sure the sentiment is going to be that of the basically that for most of the people who watched it. I mean, it just was not a good watch at all. And so I think the NBA could put on a better performance and put together a better presentation next year. I'm sure they'll go back to the drawing board and make this next year's run much more smoothly, because this was like I don't think I've ever seen anything drag out like this one did. I mean, they just found a way to stretch it out unnecessarily. Um, and then not only that, but even though they've made it more competitive, where they've made it so that you have a target score, which I think kind of helps provide some extra incentive. At the end of the day, they need to keep tweaking it, because we had a lot of garbage time there. Even though we knew um, that there were does a target score, it wasn't like the game was close for a good portion of the down the stretch. So still got to tweak it. Excuse me. But you know, I think also part of the problem was some of the players that you would think would be there missing. Some of the guys that make it all star ish, their names just weren't involved this year. So when you consider who was down there, it's like, okay, this is a different year. You got to welcome in some new guys. But I just think that I think there was a lot of players that you would otherwise expect to see there. Injury kind of robbed some guys of what you would expect to see, and just overall snubs. But I don't know. I think the NBA is gonna have to take a look at some things, because I know that they're allowing for some big money changes to come in. Um, New ownership, guys that are coming in with much deeper pockets, and I think the challenge for the NBA is when you let that happen, you got to make sure that when the big guys come in, they don't compromise the product itself by way of their interests and the things that they can just influence. You don't want the product to be translatable in a bad way. I guess is what I'm trying to express. You don't want everything to get so money oriented and so numbers oriented to that you can't even watch it. And I think that's kind of where we're at. I think that's kind of almost where we're at. It's like there's so many incentives going on in basketball, so many different things that people are trying to guarantee around the game of chance. It's just like you end up having so much there that is compromised, that you just understand that after a while you're not even watching a basketball game. You're just watching the various interests of different companies kind of merging in different directions, and whatever they've chosen to take place will just kind of transpire. So you kind of felt like you were watching something like that tonight in a lot of different ways. So I just think the NBA needs to get back to understanding. That's like I always say about my Lakers, but the league as a whole, you got to get away from the numbers mentality, or rather the minutes mentality, as I like to call it, where you're focused on players' minutes instead of the strategy on the floor. You want to get away from stuff that otherwise pulls you away from winning, because at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is compete. And if players are down there competing in ways that don't, involve winning the game itself, um, it's going to translate to fans being unhappy. That's what you're going to see. So, yeah, the All Star game was a great, I guess you could say, mashing of those interests, as you could very well see out there. It was just guys not trying to get hurt, guys trying to debut their sneakers, guys trying to, you know, mic up while they're running around. It was just a lot of stuff that had absolutely nothing to do with being competitive. And we think about a guy like Kobe Bryant. That's one of the reasons why the All Star game has, his name attached to the trophy, is because he was the one guy who made the game competitive. He didn't allow for stuff like that. What was going on tonight? He would have got out there and got about 3 or 4 steals and forced guys to be competitive because there was no other way. He was about to run around down there. He did it every year. And the game would be competitive because he'd come out kicking people. He'd come out and making sure that the game was competitive, And so I think we missed that out there. That type of, spirit wasn't on the floor to kind of just turn up the competitiveness and make it so that guys cared about beating one another. Um, so, yeah, not not a shining night in regards to NBA All Star games. Obviously, you got the 55 points scored for Jason Tatum, but I don't know that this isn't a night that the guy who got 55 wouldn't have got 75 the way defense was being played tonight. You know what I mean? The guy who had the record last, he would have scored more tonight. So that's kind of how I look at that. When you have as many lanes open as you saw out there, um, it's hard. It's hard not to score a lot. But you got to give Jason his credit, obviously, for hitting a bunch of 3-point shots. Repeatedly. He was super hot, so it wasn't like he wasn't displaying his talent. But it wasn't like guys were trying to win either. It wasn't very competitive. So I just think I don't. I'm looking at this era and I'm zooming out and I'm saying, okay, this is what I call the Adam Silver era. We're in his era. These are his times, and what I'm seeing is, it's a we're getting away from this from the sport itself. That's what we got to understand. Now that we're however many years into his vision, um, the game is like an arcade version of itself. It really is. He's turned the game into something that it was never before. And while some may be enjoying it as it pertains to the high scoring and stuff like that, no defense, at the end of the day, it makes for a bad watch when it really comes down to it. It does, especially when you know how to strategize basketball games. You see teams strategizing improperly just for the sake of all of it. It makes for a compromise. It makes, I don't know what the word would be, but you just rather not see it. I guess that's what it comes down to. And as I listen to people talk about it, the more and more I realize that's what I'm hearing. People are just not enjoying games all over the country because they keep seeing this type of stuff. Um, so the NBA has a lot of work to do, and I'm afraid they may not be heading in the right direction based on some of the moves that look like that are being made right now. Um, but I'll tell you this: if they're wise and they want this to be successful, they will figure it out. It's that kind of thing. It's like, how long do you stay in a situation where you realize, okay, all that we're trying to do is water down the product so much that the fans no longer even want to see it? At what point do we start to get wise and start doing things differently so that the product can get back to looking the way it needs to look? And I think that's what needs to be disciplined amongst the owners now. It's like, all right, we got all the money, we can do all kinds of stuff, but if everybody's doing all this and nobody wants to watch this, then it's just us messing around with stuff nobody's watching. So at this point, you got to bring back the viewer, and I think to bring back the viewer, you're gonna have to bring back competitiveness, bring back defense. Um, Injuries are a real thing, though, so you don't want to go backwards in what you understand in regards to protecting players. But something needs to change in regards to what we're seeing, because even now you're seeing certain games that are more physical than others. Some games you're like, well, I mean, if we saw games like this every night, it would be less to complain about. Where guys barely blow the whistle at all. You see physicality all night long, and the game was free flowing, and so on and so forth. But then you'll see games where it's not like that, or the inconsistency, I guess, is just, it's blatant, it's obvious, and you know, one would think that the refs are professionals. They know what they're doing. I don't assume that it's an easy job. It's definitely not. But some of the inconsistencies you see out there and the way the games are officiated, it just is not the same every night. Maybe there's rhyme or reason to that, but I would like a bit more parity, is what I'm saying. Obviously, different players need to be officiated differently, all different types of matchups, things like that. It makes a lot of sense to understand that the system is, um, in regards to officiating, it's not as simple as what a layman may think. But even still, when you grow up watching the game as much as I have, you expect more parity, just the same, just the same. So that's where my mind goes in regards to what I'm seeing. Um, I hope that the NBA tries to continue to tweak the All Star format a little bit. The Team LeBron, Team Giannis thing, I kind of gotten used to it. Players being picked before the game. The one thing that I drew from what Lucas said, he enjoyed that process, but it took a lot of time. And I think that's the story of tonight. Is how was the time ultimately utilized tonight? And the answer was poorly. The NBA did not value their time in the NBA's All-Star game as much as maybe you would hope they would. And so, um, yeah, I think the players, coaches, fans, everybody is pretty much sounded off. From what I'm hearing, it's not as great as they would hope. So I expect big changes, man. I don't know if they're gonna do away with the Team Giannis, Team LeBron type deal. I don't know. Get back to East versus West. I think either way doesn't really bother me. That's not where the problem is. The problem is um, certain other aspects. Just shortening halftime. Getting defense back out there somehow, getting competitiveness back out there. Um, I like the idea of shortening quarters and getting people paid and all of that for each quarter, but you got to expedite that process. We don't need to slow down and give a trophy every quarter. It's just too damn slow. You know, that's the most important thing. Speed it up. Listen, boom, quarter. All right, cool. Let's move on. Boom, quarter. All right, cool. Let's move. It doesn't have to be an event after every quarter. And so, I'm glad that ended. I'm glad that ended. Um, and that's pretty much the end of it. And I think most people agree. Uh, we'll see how the sentiment is, on the big networks tomorrow, what everyone thinks of it. But I just understand that when you're used to a certain level of basketball, a certain product, you don't want to see what we saw tonight. You don't actually want to sit through that. Um, there were some good highlights. Ja Morant dunks, Markkanen dunks, Braun off the glass. Like I said, Jason Tatum hit a bunch of threes. There was a lot of stuff to see. Joel Embiid scored a lot. Kyrie went crazy. Um, you know, but at the end of the day, you just saw guys giving concession lanes, concession baskets, getting out the way, jogging, launching 50 footers constantly for no apparent reason other than just not be running too much. And it's like, if you're going to do that, just dribble a couple times and pass it around and do something. I mean, do something other than just launch it. I saw Dame shoot his, half court shot. That was kind of nice, seeing him knock down one of those. It's his range, so no one's surprised by that. But Donovan Mitchell launching them from forever away. It's just like, bro, take a couple steps in wouldn't hurt. It's easier to watch. So that was my thing. And then, some of the big dogs, they didn't want to play tonight. That's another thing that maybe the NBA wants to take a look at, is when the All-Star game is taking place. Maybe they want to pull it back a little sooner. Maybe they want to put it in the off season. I don't know how they want to do it, but it just seems like what we're finding is players are being a little more smart about how they play those games because they know how much of the roles, how much of the load they're going to be taking on in regards to their own teams for the rest of the season. Obviously, with parity in the league, especially the Western Conference guys, they don't want to risk getting hurt, and then with the final push being as it is, with few teams, having any separation, the last thing you want is the All-Star break to ultimately cost you. And so that's ultimately what we run into as Laker fans with this dang finger injury. Even though LeBron is downplaying it like crazy, I still very much am concerned that it's going to be something that's not 100% healed up by next Thursday. But nevertheless, he'll play through it just the same. But, Luka Doncic only shot the ball like once or twice. He said he got his 2 points. He was good. Giannis didn't play very much. Obviously, he stepped out, got the early dunk, and then stepped away. Bron wasn't out there, etc. So it's like, some of the big dogs understood what their responsibilities are, and it just probably doesn't make much sense for them to really try in an all-star game like this. Seen guys get hurt in the past in these games, and so, I don't blame guys. That's something that the NBA may want to take a look at. And so, yeah, that's pretty much where my head is. That's my thought. Just wanted to come up here and follow up on the NBA All-Star Game. Continue to complain about it. Listening to others complain about it as well. Just overall giving it a fail, more or less. Most people are, so to speak. I mean, great players down there doing what they do, but it just did not translate to anything to watch. So if they don't want this thing to turn into the Pro Bowl, because that's where it's headed, they're going to start slowly but surely turning it, falling into obscurity. And, Kareem mentioned something that I mentioned as well. Julius Randle in the three-point contest, Trey Murphy in the dunk contest. I mean, look, Trey Murphy was dunking his butt off, so ain't no question he belonged there. But Julius in the three-point contest? No, man. There's better three-point shooters in this all over the league than to have him down there wasting his time trying. I'm not mad at seeing people compete for things. Obviously, he shot over 40% in several seasons now. I think this year and then 2 years ago. But it's a three-point contest, man. You got to have snipers down there. They got real shooters in this league. Don't have him down there shooting with Julius Randle. It just, it's one of those things where it's like, you don't want to say they're rigging it, but if you make it so that not all of the contestants are up to par, you can shorten the chances of guys you can increase the chances of the guys you want to win getting a chance to succeed if you just start removing certain competition levels. So I don't know if that's what I'm seeing there, but it aligns, man. It definitely aligns. I don't know, but and then the Mac McClung winning the dunk contest, I thought that was really cool. Everybody who's watched Mac McClung knows he could dunk like that. Everybody knows, but it's one of those situations where you just want to see other guys jump in there. Where's John Morant? Where are the stars? And I think, this is what I was hoping wouldn't happen. and I know I was going to end this video, but when Bron decided that he wasn't going to dunk, and then some of the other guys said, nah, we're not going to do the dunk contest, I knew it was going to set a precedent that some of these young dudes was going to think because I'm up here that it's beneath me to do the dunk contest because Bron obviously didn't do it, KD obviously didn't do it, etc. That's what I was worried about. Now these dudes think they right for not doing it. It's like they think it's a prestige thing I done to do it. I would never. It's like, no, Michael Jordan did it, bro. Kobe Bryant did it. Those two guys did it, and they're greater than you, so you can do it too. Like, it's not one of them situations where you should be considered one of the prestigious players and therefore we don't dunk. Like, that's such a bad culture, man. They have got to get that out of these kids' heads, man. Seriously. Whatever set that precedent, they need to be reversed so that these dudes can get back to giving the product what it deserves, man. It's actually the complete opposite. If you want the great players, you definitely
should want to be able to display that you're better dunker than everybody else, especially since they got specialty dunkers out there who should probably be better dunkers than you. Guys like, Mac McClung. You don't want to get beat by Mac McClung, and essentially you not completing this telling me you probably would get beat by Mac McClung. It's the complete opposite effect. That's what I would tell a dude like Ja Morant. It looks like you running. It don't look like you wearing some type of, prestigious hat. It looked like you scared to dunk with dudes that you probably should be able to outdunk. So that's what needs to be drilled into these youngsters' heads. Y'all look like cowards, straight up. I don't know what Ron was on, but that's what y'all look like. So that's what I got to say about that. At any rate, that's what I got to say. My name is BDL44. I thank y'all for watching.